Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Whenever you are tuning in, I want to thank you for coming to another edition of Mommy Mondays, where we and I, Indira, come to you and give you lots of tips for all different types of children, for all different types of situations. I'm a mother of four. In case this is your first time tuning in, I'm a mother of four. I'm a special educator. I have been both a speech pathologist and a special education teacher for over 20 years, okay? So right now I'm still a special educator, and in addition, I own a daycare where we service children with special needs. That's our specialty, okay? We have all different types of children, but we definitely concentrate on those with special needs. And in our center, we have children who are non-verbal. So today I wanted to offer some tips to parents on how to help your non-verbal child communicate and how to communicate with your non-verbal child. And lastly, how is your nonverbal child already communicating with you? Let's talk about those things and see if they're working, see if I can help you and offer some things to you, or just at least empower you with what you're already doing so that you can give yourself a pat on the back, okay? So, in the last video, we spoke about communicating, and I broke communication up into 3 stages. And the first stage was the nonverbal stage. But sometimes we have children who are past that first stage, past the third stage, which I started at 5 years old, and now they're already into their school years and they're nonverbal. Okay, so we'll be speaking about those children as well as children who are still toddlers and who are nonverbal. Okay. So, communication, as we stated in the last video, is both nonverbal and verbal. Nonverbal and verbal. Language is receptive and expressive. So, receptive is what we understand, and verbal is what we say. So when we are dealing with children who are nonverbal, a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, the receptive language is stronger than the expressive language. So your child, even though he or she is not speaking to you verbally, they are understanding what's happening and they're understanding the world around them. Sometimes the issue is we don't understand the way they're communicating to us. Okay? So right now, specifically, through my experiences, my studies, and just trial and error and my tutelage, I have determined that there are 3 different things that children who are nonverbal, 3 different ways that they try to communicate with us. They use sounds, gestures, and of course behaviors, like expressive behaviors. And sometimes those behaviors can be uncomfortable. Sometimes those behaviors can be embarrassing. So we're going to talk about what maybe some of those are meaning and how we can help our child to navigate their world with their way of communicating. So when a child is using sounds, a lot of times children with special needs will groan or munt, or I said groan or munt. What's munt? Groan, grunt, or moan to express some type of displeasure, right? We all do that, right? That's not something that's foreign to us. So they may use sounds. Some of the sounds can be loud, some can be quiet. Sometimes the sounds could be self-stimulating, just ways of working that vagus nerve to calm down in an anxious situation. Or they could just be sounds that they're just stemming off of. They just kind of like to hear themselves make that sound. Other ways are gestures. Some children with special needs will lead you to an object, will grab you, will put your hand over their hands for help. They will also communicate non-verbally through gestures, pushing, shoving. Also, the third way is through behaviors. A lot of times when the sounds and the gestures are not being communicated effectively to a parent or a caregiver or a person in any given situation, then the likelihood of the behaviors increases because the child is trying to communicate. Remember, they're understanding what's happening in their environment. And sometimes they even understand that they're not able to communicate the way their peers or their siblings or even their parents are communicating. So oftentimes that will lead to frustration. And when we have frustration, we have an increase in behaviors. This is kind of like a theme that we've been having for the past Mommy Mondays, is that we see an increase in negative behaviors when children are trying to express something that they don't have the words for. Okay? So what we want to do is empower them with words. However, our words are not always verbal. A child may not have the mental capacity to verbalize because language is a process. It's not one of those things where one day we just wake up and we start talking. We go through different stages of language that starts from an infant, when we hear infant sounds of babbling and lolling. So, Zach, I'm not talking to you. So I didn't tell him I'm not talking to you. I'm doing a video. I didn't tell him. I should have told him. He was so quiet. Either way, we have to empower them with words. And so all of the times the words are not verbal, right? Sometimes we have to show them pictures. Sometimes we have to give them voice. Some children can get, you can teach them words for the sounds that they're making, right? And they will try. Sometimes they'll even, if you say ba 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 ba, they'll even try to say a portion of the word. So that's giving them the voice. Another way, as I said, are picture symbols. These things I'm about to speak about are what's called assistive technology. Okay, there goes the jargon again, assistive technology. And this is technology that assists children with communication. It can be as basic as literally a picture that says, Johnny, do you like this? Do you want this? And have two choices and you pick one. Or it can be as sophisticated as an iPad that has a program or an app in it now, and it will have a voice of a boy or a girl, man or a woman, depending on the age of the child. And when they press the button, they can communicate and it will speak for them. Okay, so for those parents who have children who are nonverbal, who your child is 3 years old and still not talking, it is time for you to speak with your local child find. If your child's in school, speak to the special education team and let them know that you are interested in getting some type of assistive technology for your child. The earlier you can empower your child with a way to communicate with you, the earlier you will see that your child will, one, increase their language, whether it's receptive language or expressive language, and two, the behaviors will reduce because they're able to navigate through their environment. Remember, we're not here, guys, to compare our children. We're not here to have our children to meet every single milestone that the pediatrician gives us and by a certain date. We're here at every point to help our children navigate the environment that they are in. Okay? So it may not look like your neighbor. It may not look like their friends. It may not look like your other child. It is for this particular child that you have. How can we get them to navigate and communicate across all settings? A lot of times, and I was guilty, you heard my son, he wears a hearing aid, but because I am a speech pathologist, for so long, I could understand what he was saying. So it didn't dawn on me that as a mother, I don't know, maybe I was in denial, to be honest, but it didn't dawn on me that I was waiting way too long to get intervention because, hey, I was the speech expert, right? It was frustrating for me when I didn't understand what he was saying, but I should have gotten him intervention earlier, even as an educator. But I just kept thinking, it's just him. He's a little slow, he's gonna catch up. But come to find out, there was a hearing delay. His speech was delayed because he couldn't hear. And E, B, C, D, T, L, E, all those sounds sounded the same. So reading was affected because of the lack of hearing. So we want to make sure we are checking for hearing tests. If we have a child who's nonverbal, we need to get a hearing test. We need to get in touch with that special education team and let them know that you are concerned with your child's speech and language development. If you are already on a team and you have a nonverbal child and they are continuing to try to make your child talk and your child is not talking, and the behaviors are increasing, it is time for you to get some type of assistive technology to help your child to communicate. Imagine how frustrating it is. Imagine how frustrating it is to know what you want and no one else can understand what you're saying. Okay, so that's what your child is feeling. He's an adult, she's an adult going through childhood and going through a childhood where they cannot communicate effectively to express their wants, their needs, and sometimes their happiness and their lows, right? So I want you guys to ask for help, moms. This tip today for moms is to ask for help. Especially if you have a child whose behavior is to the point where you don't even want to take them in public, you have to ask for help because it's not going to decrease. It's only going to get worse. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but if you don't get the communication needs met soon, you will see an increase in behaviors. And what ends up happening is there becomes a checklist that is filled out, and your child is now being evaluated for several different types of disorders based on their behavior. And sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with their brain. It's just they're trying to communicate. Okay? So this video is not very long today. I hope that it's helpful. What I want you to take away from this, if you have a child who is not speaking, or if they're speaking and they're not speaking clearly by the time they're 3 years old, it's time for you to talk to your local child find. That's what we call it here in my state. But look up resources. Just Google "my child is not speaking," and I'm in the state of Maryland, I'm in the state of DC or Virginia, wherever you are. Let somebody know, your pediatrician know. Don't be like me. Don't be in denial. Help your child to communicate and understand that speaking is not the only way that your child can communicate. They can utilize assistive technology. There are people who are trained with the devices who can come into your house and help your child to communicate. Okay? So please leave any comments if there's anything that I didn't touch on, because of course, as you know, I could go on and on about this subject, but again, I'm not trying to make the video long. But there are definitely questions that I know that you will have for me. Let me know what those are. Leave them in the comments, and I will try to speak on them in another video or just answer in the comments. Please like, share, and come join me on YouTube. And anyone that you know that has a child maybe with autism or nonverbal, please, please, please share this video with them. Thank you, and I'll see you next time for Mommy Monday.